I know you and a lover are having an affair, and I have the proof. That's what my husband Mark said to me over breakfast. Just like that. No good morning. No, how did you sleep? Just a bomb dropped right into my Cheerios. The man who I'd shared a life with for 15 years, who I'd given my career up for, who I'd spent the last decade trying to be the perfect wife for, looked at me like I was a complete stranger. It's funny, you know? You spend so long building this perfect little cage for yourself, a gilded prison in the heart of Connecticut, that you forget the bars are even there. I thought I was safe. I thought my little secret, the one I carried like a stone in my chest, would just stay buried forever. But the stone I was carrying? It was a boulder. A $200,000 boulder that was about to crush us all. My daughter, my son, our beautiful home, it was all teetering on the edge of a cliff. And I was the one who pushed it there. I was a ghost in my own life, just going through the motions, playing the part of the happy homemaker. And the worst part? I was so good at it. I almost believed it myself. But when he said that to me, I knew I had to tell the truth. And what he said after that? It was 1,000 times worse than any lie. If you were me, in a perfect life hiding a devastating secret, what would you do? Am I in the wrong? You see, it started way before I was Claire, the CEO's wife. It started when I was just Claire, a young, hungry journalist living in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn. I was passionate, I was ambitious, and I was so stupid. I was dating this guy, Leo. He was a musician, a real tortured artist type. He had this dream, this vision, and I was completely swept up in it. We were going to be this power couple. Me, the award-winning journalist, and him, the next big thing in indie rock. So when he came to me, all nervous and desperate, saying he was short a few thousand to produce his album, I didn't think twice. He was the love of my life, right? I co-signed a loan, a massive student loan, $200,000. I was so convinced he was going to be famous that we'd be able to pay it off in a year. It was just a stepping stone to our amazing future together. But life, as they say, has a sick sense of humor. Leo's album bombed. He descended into a world of drugs and broken promises, and about a year later, he vanished. Poof, like he'd never existed, except for this monstrous debt sitting in my name. I was young and terrified. I didn't want to destroy my credit. I had so many plans, so I started paying it. The minimum payments at first, just to keep the collectors from calling. I remember my first real paycheck. I made $800. The minimum payment was $600. I spent the rest on ramen noodles and bus fare. And then I met Mark. Mark was everything Leo wasn't. He was stable, he was successful, and he was safe. He was a hedge fund manager, and he looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. He told me he loved my spirit, my independence. So when we got serious, and the conversation of marriage came up, I knew I had to fix my mess. But by then, the debt had ballooned. With interest, it was enormous. I panicked. I was so ashamed. I thought, I'll just keep it secret until I can pay it off. It's my stupid mistake. I don't want to burden him with it. And when we got married, I was able to hide the payments. I managed our household budget, you see. I would carefully siphon off a few $100s here, 1,000 there. I'd tell Mark it was for groceries, or a new dress, or my son's therapy. It was so easy to create little digital smoke and mirrors. I'd get cash back at the grocery store. I'd transfer money to a secret account I had from my old journalism days. It was like having a second life, a second job. The perfect wife during the day, a terrified liar every time the bank statement came in. At first, it was easy to justify. It was just a mistake I was fixing. But years passed. We had our daughter Lily, and then our son Noah. Noah is a sweet boy, but he's on the spectrum and needs a lot of special care. I became supermom. I was the one doing the school runs, the doctor appointments, the therapy sessions. Mark was always at work. He'd come home, have dinner, and retreat to his study. We'd have a glass of wine, talk about the kids, and he'd go to bed. We were comfortable, but looking back, I realized we were just two people sharing a house and a family. We weren't really sharing a life. He had his world of money and deals, and I had my little world of lies. And that's what it was, a world. A parallel universe where I was a hero for protecting my family and a villain for deceiving them at the same time. Every month was a delicate balancing act of numbers and excuses. I became an expert in creative accounting, tracking every penny to make sure Mark never noticed the tiny drains on our joint account. I stopped buying things for myself. I wore old clothes, bypassed salon appointments, and claimed I simply preferred a minimalist lifestyle. In truth, every spare dollar went towards satisfying that unquenchable bank debt. I convinced myself that this sacrifice was noble. I was bearing the punishment for my youth alone, sparing my family from the shame. But isolation grows fast in the shadow of a secret. The longer I kept it, the harder it became to imagine speaking the truth. I felt like a tightrope walker who couldn't look down, moving forward only because stopping meant falling completely. Then, the bank wrote to me. They'd found out about my full-time job. The payments I'd been making were just the interest. The principal was still sitting there, a stagnant, rotting pool of debt. They gave me an ultimatum. I had to pay the full amount, or they were going to put a lien on my property. Our property. The house. The one that Mark's company had bought. I was in a panic. I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. I was planning to tell him that night. I was going to cook him his favorite dinner and just pour my heart out. I had the speech all prepared. Honey, I made a terrible mistake before I met you, and I've been trying to fix it. But he didn't give me the chance. He walked in the door that evening with a look I had never seen on his face before. It wasn't just anger. It was cold. It was clinical. It was the look he gave his subordinates at work when they'd screwed up. He was holding a manila folder in his hand, and he threw it on the kitchen island with a slap that made our salad bowls rattle. I know, he said, his voice flat and devoid of all emotion. I know who you've been giving the money to. What? Wait. What? Mark, what are you talking about? My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The guilt was immediate, but there was also this wave of pure confusion. He wasn't talking about the bank. He was talking about something else, something terrible. I hired a private investigator 2 weeks ago, Claire, he said, pulling a series of photographs from the envelope. They were pictures of me, at the bank, at a coffee shop. The face of the teller, the bags I was carrying. I've seen the withdrawals, the cash, the systematic transfer of funds. You think I'm a fool? Mark, please let me explain, I begged, reaching for his hand. It's not what you think. There's no other man. I'm not having an affair. He scoffed, and it was so cruel, so dismissive. It was a sound I had never heard him make at me. No? Then what is it? A gambling problem? A drug habit? Are you funding some secret artist lifestyle? Because I know all about your bohemian past, Claire. I know I married the cool girl from Brooklyn. I know you were involved in that crowd. What is it? What are you wasting my money on? He said, my money. Not our money, my money. It was like a slap in the face. All those years of sacrifice, of giving up my career, of managing the household, of being the perfect hostess for his corporate dinners. It was all my money. I was just a line item to him, an expense. It's a debt, Mark. It's a student loan from before we met. I finally blurted out. The cat was out of the bag. I co-signed for a friend and he defaulted. I've been trying to pay it off for years, quietly. I didn't want to worry you. I wanted to protect you from my stupid mistake. He stared at me. For a long time, he just stared. And then he laughed. It was a dry, awful laugh. A friend? You co-signed a loan for a friend and you've been paying it off with our family's money? Mark, please. I was trying to be a good wife. I didn't want you to see me as a burden, as damaged goods. I was so ashamed. Damaged goods? He interrupted, his voice rising to a shout. You're not damaged goods, Claire. You're a liability. You've been stealing from us, from our children, for a decade. The word stealing was like a knife in my gut. It wasn't stealing, I said, my own voice trembling. It was my debt. I was just managing it. Your debt? Claire, we're married. There is no your debt. It's our debt. And you hid it from me. He was pacing the kitchen now, his hands running through his hair. Do you have any idea what this could do? My reputation? My career? I'm a fund manager, for Christ's sake. I have fiduciary responsibilities. My judgment is my stock in trade. And my wife has been operating a secret slush fund. My God, Mark, listen to yourself. I'm not a criminal. I was just trying to protect you. I cried. I thought I could fix it. I was doing it so we wouldn't have to go through this. Protect me? By lying to me every single day for 10 years? You know what's worse than a wife with a secret debt? A wife who is so good at lying that I never even saw it coming. And that was the moment. That was the moment the conversation took a turn for the worst. He stopped pacing. He came to a stop right in front of me, his face inches from mine. And he said the thing that would shatter everything I thought I knew about us. Em de jur toi mui num. Em ka bao nu bi mut nu. For those who don't speak Vietnamese, let me translate. You hid this from me for 10 years. How many more secrets do you have? It wasn't the question about the money. It was the how many more. It was the implication that my whole life with him was a lie. That the foundation of our marriage, everything I had sacrificed to build, was just a performance. He was saying he never really knew me. He was saying that the woman he married, the perfect wife, the mother of his children, was just a mask I was wearing. And the person he thought I was behind the mask, he didn't know her either. It wasn't about the $200,000. It was about trust. But it wasn't a lack of trust in my actions. It was a lack of trust in my soul. He was looking at me like I was a complete stranger. And you know what I realized in that moment? He had always looked at me like that. I just never wanted to see it. I'd spent so many years trying to become the woman he wanted me to be. The quiet, supportive, suburban wife who organized the neighborhood charity events and didn't talk about her own opinions too loudly. I had stopped writing. I had stopped being curious about the world beyond my four walls. I was his perfect little picture, a painting in his gilded frame. And now he was telling me that even the painting was a fraud, that it was made of hidden brushstrokes and false colors. The love of my life, the man I had given everything to, was looking at me with pure disgust, and I knew in that moment that I couldn't fix this. The we was broken. It had been broken for a long time. I'm not the one in the wrong here, Claire, he said, his voice cold and final. This is on you. Your lack of character, your duplicity. This proves I can't trust you with anything. Not the money, not the kids, not my future. He was putting a label on me. Liar, thief, duplicitous, undeserving. It was a trial, and I was the defendant, and he was the judge, jury, and executioner. And he had already made up his mind. He was never going to see me as anything other than the woman who deceived him. This was my wake-up call. For 15 years, I had been living someone else's life. I was Mark's wife, Lily and Noah's mom, the suburban superwoman, and I had forgotten who Claire was, the reporter. The truth seeker. The woman who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. I had buried her so deep under mortgage payments and PTA meetings that I couldn't even hear her screaming anymore. But in that frozen moment of shock and disgust, I heard her again. She was telling me, take a good look. This is what he really thinks of you. And you know what? This plot twist is the one that nobody sees coming. I was planning on telling him the truth, to beg for forgiveness. But the way he reacted, the way he talked down to me, the word liability, it gave me a clarity I hadn't had in years. It was like my eyes were finally open. No, Mark, I said, and my voice was steady. I was terrified, but I kept it steady. You're right. I don't have any more secrets. This was it. The one big stupid mistake of my life. And you know what else? I'm done paying for it. I walked over to my purse and pulled out my phone. I'm done paying your debt. He stared at me, utterly confused. My debt? What are you talking about? It was your boyfriend's debt. Yes, I said, my voice gaining confidence. And it was mine. But I'm not going to be your little liability anymore. You want to know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop paying the minimums. I'll let the bank put a lien on the house. They can seize the assets that are in both our names. They can take this whole operation down. You want to call me a liability? Fine. I'll be the biggest liability you've ever had. Mark's face went pale. Claire, you're insane. If you do that, we'll be ruined. We? I laughed. It was a bitter, broken laugh. You already told me it was your money, so it's your problem. You want to see duplicity? I'll show you duplicity. I finally had some power. The secret I'd been so terrified of, the one that had been poisoning me for years, I was going to weaponize it. I could see the gears turning in his head, the PR nightmare, the damage to his reputation, the other partners in the firm finding out about his wife's financial indiscretions. He wasn't worried about me or our marriage. He was worried about his image. But then, the plot twist got deeper. I didn't have to say a word. He had already hired a private investigator. He had already put together a case. He had the folder full of photos and evidence. He had been building a narrative of infidelity, not a financial problem. And if he was so sure I was having an affair, why didn't he just file for divorce? Because if he filed for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, he wouldn't have to give me a cent. He could keep the kids. He could keep everything. He had been setting me up. My own husband was trying to frame me. The perfect husband. The pillar of the community. His plan wasn't to get the truth. It was to get rid of me. The shock of that realization hit me harder than any insult he had hurled. He hadn't hired an investigator out of hurt or concern for our relationship. He had done it to find ammunition. He wanted an easy way out. A clean narrative where he was the innocent victim of an unfaithful wife, allowing him to discard me without any financial cost or public damage to his immaculate reputation. He had already decided to cast me aside long before he ever threw that manila folder on the counter. I stood there in the quiet kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, feeling the complete shift in power between us. The fear that had kept me trapped for 10 years suddenly evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp determination. He thought he was playing a game of chess where I was just a helpless pawn, but he didn't realize I had already stopped playing by his rules. And that's the moment I realized, am I in the wrong for what I did? Absolutely. I was wrong to lie. But am I in the wrong for wanting to protect myself? For wanting to fight back? The high road? There is no high road when the person you trust most is building a trap under your feet. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a battlefield, and I was done being a civilian. So, here's the thing. I didn't cave. I didn't fall to my knees and beg him to see my side, because Mark had shown me his. He wasn't my husband. He was my adversary. A few days later, I called the bank. I authorized the voluntary repossession of my assets, I told them. The house? We sold it. The cars? We let them go. Mark had to liquidate personal investments to pay off the debt and protect his own name. I took the remaining money, a fraction of what we had, and I walked away. I took the kids, of course. He tried to fight it, but how could he? He couldn't present a solid case for my character without revealing his own plot to the judge. He had lied too. He lied about his motives. He had a folder full of photographs of me at the bank, but no lover. In court, he looked like a paranoid fool. I got full custody of the kids and enough alimony to get us back on our feet. But that's the story of how I got my life back. I live in a small apartment now, not a mansion. My son is in a school that actually understands him, and my daughter is happier because I'm happier. I'm writing again. I'm freelancing for a local paper. It's not the glamorous life of a journalist in New York, but it's mine. It's my voice. I look at Mark now, with his pristine suits and his empty house, and I just feel pity. He will never really know me. He never even tried. The question he asked that morning, how many more secrets do you have? That was his way of telling me that my past, my ambition, my very essence was a threat to him. And maybe it was, but that threat wasn't my problem to fix. So, looking back, am I in the wrong? Yes. I should have told him the truth the day we got married. But am I in the wrong for finally choosing myself over the perfect gilded cage? No. I was wrong to lie, but I was right to leave. This is Claire signing out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I want to know, if you were in my shoes, would you have fought back too? Or would you have tried one more time to fix the unfixable? Tell me below.